and welcome to another Wrestling Roundtable discussion podcast. I'm Adam Wilbourn from WhatCulture, joined by the Dadley boys of WhatCulture, Michael Hamflett and Michael Sidgwick, to discuss a burning issue in wrestling today. You can probably guess what we're going to be talking about. But before we begin, if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes or Spotify for daily podcasts where we review Raw, SmackDown, pay-per-views, we have interviews, we have loads of these roundtable discussions, of course, and we have a roundup of the week complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. But gents, Daniel Bryan is WWE Champion, and he's a baddie. You list those things, and it's like, well, what have we got to talk about? What's really going on in wrestling at this point? You know, it's one of them quiet weeks before a pay-per-view. It's mad, isn't it? You know, like me and Sidgwick were talking about his great article about confirming the start of the banter era just recently with Crown Jewel. We're living in it. I got great admiration for Vince McMahon wanting to over-deliver on what he believed was a lost main event when he lost Becky and Ronda Rousey. I got great faith that he cares about that match, because why would he do something like this unless he felt like he absolutely had to? Yeah. It's incredible.
It's weird how far Charlotte's fallen.
Yeah. They're like willing to have
She wasn't like an adequate replacement in his mind.
Not enough. Not enough.
Enough about Charlotte. This is... I just woke up to this news, and what was incredible really is that I went on Twitter first thing this morning to see the fallout and who was going to replace Becky at Survivor Series and all the rest of it, and see what the reaction was, wanting to measure the temperature. And the first 10 tweets on my timeline were like memes and burials of Nia Jax and all the rest of it. And then Vince McMahon Googling, which is a great Twitter account, you should all follow it, tweeted the match graphic for Daniel Bryan versus Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series with something like, how do I concuss my next wrestler? And I was just looked at it and I paused and I was like, what? And I can't swear on this, but you know what I was going to say. What? What is going on? And I don't know how to process this information adequately. It's an astonishing development that we talked about, how we're kind of in a banter era, how everything's completely chaotic. I love the hell out of this match. I've wanted it for years. Not as much as Bryan has, who's laid this out in his mind forever. I've wanted this match for years. But the principle behind Daniel Bryan returning to WWE competition in 2018 and turning heel 9 months later because they've botched it so badly, it's mind-blowing. It really is.
This is something he has obviously campaigned for.
According to Observer Radio, which I listened to this morning on the way into work, after Meltzer, who on his emergency podcast talked about Phoenix for 10 minutes. Like, God bless him, I love the guy, never change. It's funny afterwards, but I was quite infuriated because I needed to know the news. Apparently Daniel Bryan is really dismayed at how his run's gone. Obviously he is, and he is pushed to turn heel because he's realised that as a babyface, he's knackered. Not just Daniel Bryan is a babyface, any WWE babyface, the way they book now, is kind of screwed.
I know Adam Wilbourn, you'll have seen this, Sidgwick, you might not. They framed an episode of Total Bellas around Daniel Bryan changing his in-ring style should he ever get to fight Brock Lesnar. Amongst all of the dreams he wanted to fight for when he wanted to come back, this match was a huge one. This match was something he penned in, even when he's criticising WWE's booking in interviews and he's kind of bantering off the company as this wrestling show that can no longer get stories from A to B. He wanted this Brock Lesnar match. And to get it as a heel at 5 days' notice, it's so 2018. Yeah, it's like what more can we keep adding to this? Like, you think Shane McMahon running around the ring with a trophy in Saudi Arabia is something, and now they just fire this at you 2 weeks later.
Before we go forward and talk about Survivor Series, I want to take a quick step back, because obviously the original plan for, well, the first, I know this was the second, but the first AJ Styles versus Daniel Bryan match was obviously going to take place at WWE Crown Jewel. Do you think they had a turn planned for then, or they were going to execute the turn then? Or do you think, as with many things in WWE, this is a snap decision?
Execute's a poor choice of words. You should watch out for that going forward. And
we'll chop that from the front.
I don't know. You know what I mean? I've got no idea. The usual rules simply do not apply anymore, and that has been completely made clear over the past 24 hours. I can't answer your question. I've got absolutely no idea. If we look at the storytelling, was there an edge to Bryan's character foreshadowing any of this?
Only after Crown Jewel. They were sort of teasing a double turn with it. He was the irrational one in the Survivor Series captaincy battle with The Miz on SmackDown last week, which, to be fair, they were obviously, as you say, if Bryan was kind of angling for this kind of turn, then that was something they were maybe working towards, using The Miz as the guy that kind of pushes him over the edge, but not to the extent that he just hoofs AJ Styles in his known weak area to steal his title, at the very last opportunity he was likely to get.
And he was, just to come to AJ Styles, he was, one day away from breaking?
Today was the day. I don't mind admitting I had a piece drafted last night on him breaking Randy Savage's title record, but he now just goes level 8th with the Macho Man as a result of this, which is another, there's so many little remarkable coincidences here. So it was 1 year ago that AJ Styles pretty much saved the Survivor Series and changed the Brock Lesnar match again from Jinder Mahal to that, something we were all like, oh, how has this happened? And thank God it's happened. And now we're here again, and Styles is the man involved yet again in a huge seismic change to one of the biggest pay-per-views of the year, again featuring Brock Lesnar, who really shouldn't even be in the company now, let alone be Universal Champion. It's a series of chaotic events coalescing into what we're about to see.
It's one of those things, isn't it? If you go back in time a year and AJ Styles has just won the WWE Championship, if someone had told you, right, he's going to hold that title for the entire year through fighting people like Shinsuke Nakamura at WrestleMania, and it'll be a little bit disappointing. Daniel Bryan will return to wrestling.
Yeah.
They'll screw it up. They'll turn him heel and hand him the WWE Championship, not on a pay-per-view, but on an episode of SmackDown.
After he, in an unprecedented move, no-showed a WWE event on moral grounds.
Indeed.
It's the most balls Daniel Bryan has ever shown as a wrestler for himself. He talks in his own book about not being that kind of guy that feels the need to fight for things backstage. He loves what he does, so he goes to work and he does it really, really well. Has this for the first time ever made Vince McMahon legitimately respected?
Well, that's what I was going to say, because we obviously did a lot of stuff centering around Crown Jewel for good reason. But one of the things I remember doing myself was talking about John Cena and Daniel Bryan not going or refusing to go to WWE Crown Jewel, and talking about how, well, John Cena has done this for his career. And as we said, Daniel Bryan is more morally driven here. And the fact that subsequent to that, we were speculating we might not see Daniel Bryan in another main event again. We were saying that, weren't we? We were saying, look, they've tapped him out. They've deliberately had him submit as opposed to get pinned by AJ Styles on the SmackDown before Crown Jewel. That could be quite easily seen as a sort of microcosm of how the company see him now. They would perhaps see him as unreliable because they're going to have to do more shows in Saudi Arabia. They've got a 10-year deal after all that. And now he's WWE champion.
WWE hates outsider criticism. They love getting glorified by the mainstream media, but they hate an entity like WhatCulture. Hence why when they need taglines for the WWE 2K, they never will ever do that. Whenever they show Sportskeeda or someone on their graphics saying, oh, wasn't this event great or hasn't this happened, they'll never do WhatCulture because I think we take a balanced view.
I like to think so,
yeah. And have they done all of this to think, right, we're going to render your jobs completely redundant because you've got no idea how to approach this right now?
I will say this. We talk about the rules not applying because so often the rules do not apply. But we have watched about 6 months of black-tarped seats on one halves of arenas at SmackDown tapings.
Even in England.
Is this a bit of old-fashioned carny promoter work from Vince McMahon to remind people that it's still worth buying those tickets and coming out to the arenas? The house show attendances are one of the only old metrics that seem to be suffering in a time when the company are making more money than ever. I'll joke about that they need to fill these arenas with actors, but we're really not that far away from even losing fans on the hard camera side at some of these tapings. This reminds fans that every now and then, if you buy a ticket, you're going to get a shock and you're going to get a surprise and you're going to get something that makes you want to say that you were there. This is very old-fashioned stuff. This is rule following back to the days before pay-per-view. So there's still something in Vince McMahon. There's still that little carny edge to him that just still wants to flog tickets to a wrestling show, and buried underneath the madness of some of the things we've seen on television and the fact that virtually no storylines make sense, there is that little hook that's got us all as excited for the Survivor Series in the proper way rather than just staring into the madness of it all.
So what do you two foresee happening at Survivor Series? Brock Lesnar versus Daniel Bryan, champion versus champion. We were anticipating Brock AJ too. We even did a podcast earlier on this week about perhaps AJ should go over there. It doesn't matter now.
He's not on the card, brother.
So what happens in Bryan versus Brock?
Right. I don't know. by Sunday, like, this is elementary maths that my 3-year-old kid could do. How many days will he have been WWE champion by Sunday? 5? 5. Right. Surely, right. Surely they're going to have to make this the competitive match that Daniel Bryan has laid out in his mind for, like, ever since Brock Lesnar returned in 2012. Like, this is 6 years in the making. It's going to have to be a competitive match. Daniel Bryan, incidentally, has worked marvelously with the likes of Big Show in the past. He knows how to make David versus Goliath dynamics somewhat viable. He can do, like, a really good shoot-style match with Lesnar that's competitive. Doesn't necessarily have to be long. It doesn't have to necessarily be overtly dangerous, especially now that it's a heel and draw on his, like, injured neck, like the German suplexes could have really leaned into that. I'm expecting, because it makes bloody sense as a 5-day-old champion, for this to be a really competitive shoot-style match which doesn't risk too much damage to his neck and head, which he's obviously had great troubles with over the years.
It's funny that you mentioned the Big Show, because I was trying to think of how, like, Daniel Bryan is a supreme talent, and, you know, if you watch the SmackDown match against AJ Styles, like, you can see the moment when when the referee goes down and, like, Bryan only takes the tiniest little facial change and all of a sudden, like, he's snapped and he's a heel and he's going to take that title however he wants. He's a phenomenal heel, and I think there's a really underrated Daniel Bryan performance, which I believe was at the Royal Rumble in 2012, when he had to fight the Big Show and Mark Henry as a David versus Goliath heel. Like, the two Goliaths were ready to take his title, and he was somehow the villain, and he was half their size. He's got to do that again against Brock Lesnar. It's not the match he envisaged from a storyline point of view, but it's the match we know he's capable of delivering. This has got to be, somehow this is going to babyface Brock Lesnar, by the way. Brock absolutely murdering Daniel Bryan. Brock Lesnar will be the babyface, because I believe Bryan will be talented enough to get himself over as the heel in the match. I think it's going to be fantastic as well. I think it's going to be absolutely brilliant. I can't wait.
Hope it will be.
And
I've wanted this match for absolutely ages, man.
Is there any possibility that, again, there's like the little sort of crumbs of logic in all this? We were told that Brock Lesnar's got 2 matches left, and if AJ Styles was going to be one, we were all looking to maybe it being Braun Strowman just to get the belt off Brock, or something even more ridiculous, just to sort of give Lesnar something to do at WrestleMania. One of the matches is now Daniel Bryan. So if it is just a 2-match deal, at least they've somehow found a way to slot it in. You know, and you've still got that Braun match there if you want it. You know, it hasn't worked out too badly, all things considered. Like, an errant Nia Jax punch has triggered a chain of events that has maybe worked out okay in the long term for WWE.
Looking past Survivor Series and into the future for Daniel Bryan, I think there's going to be, you know, lots and lots of speculation as where we head to from here. Obviously, we are in the slow build. I know Royal Rumble is the first step, but effectively, towards the end of the year, we've got TLC, and then we have the Royal Rumble in January. Looking forward for Daniel Bryan, what does the future hold for him? And perhaps, what can you foresee happening at the Royal Rumble and then on to WrestleMania?
I've got absolutely no idea.
I mean, look, I want to buy you a pasty in April. Adam Wilbourn. I want a babyface Miz, a character I've always believed in, to take on a heel Daniel Bryan in a complete, subverted.
It sounds ridiculous.
In a subverted version of a feud that failed this year. I think we can agree that it didn't deliver like it was expected to. I would watch the hell out of that on a WrestleMania card. But beyond that, I'm with Sidgwick. I can no longer predict. I don't even know if he's going to have the title by WrestleMania, because I'd started to accept that maybe AJ was going to have it. I thought they were going to. It just seemed to me logical that they just have AJ's run, continue through the Rumble, continue through the Elimination Chamber, and lose it on a grand stage, like he passes Punk's record and all the stuff. You know, like,
not that it matters anymore, because obviously plans have just completely changed. So, like, try tweeting that at Dave Meltzer now and thinking how he can't beat how he's wrong, because obviously he's right. Plans change ridiculously. Frequently. Last week on SmackDown, they teased a dissension between the friendship of Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon. Daniel Bryan was a babyface at this point, even though he had a little bit of an edge. Shane McMahon was due to capitalise on the preposterously brilliant idea that he's the best in the world. And I was firmly expecting babyface Daniel Bryan versus heel Shane McMahon. And you know what? They've had, like, a shared history and a chemistry for so long that I would have been all for it. They're both heels now.
Wait a minute.
They're both heels now.
Wait a minute. Bryan beats Shane to become best in the world. Bryan Punk.
All right, get his bloody name out of it. I'm sick of hearing his name.
I'm sorry, the weird thing's not happening in WWE anymore. You know,
Right? Yeah. Right. Okay. I'm with you. Right, it's going to happen. No, but they're clearly going to do like one thing we can be certain of in this incredibly uncertain day. As sure as the bloody rain, they're going to do a 3-match series between AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan, in which the first 2 matches end inconclusively, even in a TLC match. But maybe they'll do some stupid stuff. Oh, God, I do well not to swear on these. They've got TLC in December.
Yeah.
They'll have a TLC match for that title.
Yeah.
They'll do something where AJ Styles, because in kayfabe is a moron, is a southern, stupid, backwards moron who's going to, I think, get like his leg trapped in a ladder, like he got the leg trapped in
and
the table.
crotch himself
yeah,
with no cup. Because God forbid the man protect his.
He did this
bow
against
tie.
Kevin Owens.
If
Like the-
Wendy Styles, buy him a cup for Christmas.
Yeah, so he did it against Kevin Owens, didn't he? Where he
Yeah.
got his leg trapped in the answer. They'll do
Hideous
something,
finish. Hideous.
a hideous finish of that nature, where he gets his leg trapped in the ladder at TLC. Is that the last pay-per-view of the year?
Yeah.
They'll do another gimmick at the Rumble.
Keeps them both out the Rumble match.
Keeps them both out the Rumble match. It's just so strange because they're going to do another Saudi show post Mania. He can't really be the champion, so maybe he loses it at Mania. But to whom?
Well,
Who's been built? Who's been built? Or who hasn't been killed? Basically, Samoa Joe's can't be anywhere near the title scene.
No.
His is a headliner. He's screwed for the time being. Jeff Hardy, do they turn Orton face?
Oh,
Like what?
no.
What do they do?
I mean, I've let you two have at it, and I've
Come on,
been
then.
waiting for my moment.
My pick, just to formalise this, is Daniel Bryan versus babyface Randy Orton, just because that's how crazy things are.
Pass.
Wow. I mean,
What's yours, though?
I think they're probably going to have to do Orton Batista at WrestleMania because of Triple H's injury. Although we know he's superhuman, so he can come back for something like that. But talking about Daniel Bryan and his road and eventual WrestleMania match, this is a match that I have been plugging. I don't know since last WrestleMania, I think.
Bryan's return,
And
maybe?
it's not, it's obviously, I'm not the only one who said this, it's been said multiple times. It's basically was pitched by Miz the day that Daniel Bryan announced he was coming back. It was the match that we all wanted to see, Daniel Bryan versus The Miz. And we've had this history. We've obviously had all the history prior to Daniel Bryan's terrible injury and subsequent retirement and then return. And then we had that weird moment, didn't we, where they suddenly went, oh, we're going to throw together Daniel Bryan versus The Miz for, what was it, SummerSlam?
SummerSlam was the first.
Yeah. So that was arguably done, or we certainly speculated at the time that we weren't sure about Daniel Bryan's contract situation, what was his decision regarding his future.
Yeah.
And then once that was sort of sorted out, and then they, like you said, we had a few more matches. We had the one
Mixed tag.
with Brie and Maurice, of course.
Soup Showdown final battle.
And heading into Survivor Series, you know, a day or two ago, I was sat there going, it's very simple here. You have AJ versus Brock.
Fucking 101.
You have the weird Survivor Series team with Bryan and Miz in it.
Yeah.
Some sort of match at TLC, and either there or at Royal Rumble, I said you basically almost stole directly the Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, Aleister Black angle of Johnny Gargano trying to cost Tommaso Ciampa and accidentally costing Aleister Black, but with roles including The Miz, Bryan, and AJ Styles. And then you obviously, I think most people, once you knew that Daniel Bryan was coming back, I'd bet most people said, oh, Daniel Bryan has to win the Royal Rumble. And that's something we've been saying for ages. Even when the other day they said, whoever wins the Mixed Match Challenge gets number 30 in the Royal Rumble, we said, well, it doesn't really matter because Bryan's going to be the one who probably runs that and goes on to face what I assumed was going to be WWE Champion heel Miz. And yet now, we are looking at a scenario where we could quite easily say if you have that series of matches and Daniel Bryan lies, cheats, and steals his way to being to retain the WWE Championship, you're in a position where I don't know what they're going to do with the Universal Championship, but they usually do something big, and it doesn't usually involve the Royal Rumble winner. And you could quite easily argue that, along with hopefully Becky Lynch winning the Women's Royal Rumble, which makes the most sense of all, the Miz somehow turns babyface, wins the Royal Rumble, and challenges Daniel Bryan in a complete role reversal of A, what we anticipated, and B, what we've
want.
seen, and arguably, C, what we want. at WrestleMania 35.
I mean,
5 years after his coronation as this amazing, hugely over champion, you could have Daniel Bryan walking into WrestleMania with the WWE Championship and fans, in theory, hoping he loses it.
I mean, last week we were looking for a work rate heel for Hulk Hogan, weren't we?
All right, enough about him. If we get a heel Daniel Bryan, and I'm going to say these words, I'm going to
It's going on record. Something's going on record here. I can feel it.
If we get a heel Daniel Bryan versus a babyface Miz at WrestleMania 35, what does that say about this company and how it's literally backwards in how to produce a show, a content, a narrative, a fictional universe? It is completely and utterly backwards. The old WWF used to be a babyface promotion. Hulk Hogan got me into it with his gigantic muscles. Bret Hart made me realise, this is art and this is something that I'm going to love for a long time because it just speaks to me, it appeals to me.
We travelled the same journey, didn't we? I think, Bret, you needed Bret to get you out of the big muscle Hogan Warrior period.
Yeah, so it goes from fad to art, from Hogan to Bret. Then you mature alongside it with another babyface champion by the name of Steve Austin. As you grow into adulthood, it's confusing. It's sometimes not great.
Talk about the wrestling then.
Yeah. WWE has now become such a toxic, hateful, inept organisation that they can somehow engineer a scenario in which the most organic, over-likeable, sympathetic babyface they've ever had fall into their laps because they had very little to do with it from an office perspective, turn heel because they're just so obsessed with getting heat and doing all this antagonistic stuff. I find I can't even get the words out. I find it incredible that it's come to this. It is absolutely insane. It is crazy.
I think 24 hours ago, to Vince McMahon, Daniel Bryan was a V-neck jumper wearing, wingtip shoe wearing, avocado toast munching millennial man. Today, he's a Vince McMahon guy. He doesn't believe that man can ever be a babyface, as told through the eyes and mouth of Ronda Rousey. But this Daniel Bryan, a guy that snaps, a guy that's just gone mad because apparently, wearing that V-neck jumper and eating that avocado toast makes you a weird guy. That's what's going to turn a guy to insanity and turn a guy into, hoofing his friend in the spuds to win the world title. It's all right by me because I think I'd rather watch, in this version of WWE where so little matters, I'd rather watch the wrestlers I like do work that they seem to enjoy. I feel so sad watching these, to use Vince's word, to watch these millennial performers turn up for work and almost suffer it, get given scripted material that they clearly don't believe in, get given matches that don't favour them. I'd rather watch a guy like Bryan thrive doing something he enjoys than suffer as a babyface.
I'm into it. I'm long past being angry or even numb. I could get a perverse pleasure out of this, and it's fascinating. It's crazy. It's fascinating. It's really interesting. It's still insane. It's still completely insane. Sorry, go on.
I just wanted to say very quickly there. You look at, like you say, these baby faces that they've attempted to push and botched for years now.
Repeatedly, yeah.
And this year, you look at Becky Lynch, this is the most obvious example, and Randy Orton, we've sat here before and said he's doing the best work of his career because he's just going in and enjoying himself, but being a heel. Arguably, I know it's not something that Daniel Bryan necessarily wanted when he first started out, but he sat there, looked at it and gone, well, it's far better being a heel in this organisation. So,
and what did we say before we turned the mics on? Where does this lead in the end? Bryan turns babyface again. The great heels.
And then they botch him again.
Well, yeah, probably. That's where they drop the ball. Becky Lynch is the biggest star in the company
Absolutely.
at the moment. By far. And this heel turn, which they've, to be fair to WWE, I have to give them credit. I think creatively, they've steered this heel turn in the right direction. They've let fans cheer her. They've let fans enjoy her. The whole thing with the man is something that WWE are very conscious of. This is not happening behind their backs, and they know what they've got in Becky Lynch. So all you'll have is another run for Bryan at the tail end of this, where his sheer bloody-minded popularity will get him through this heel run and give him another second life as a babyface. We thought this comeback was his second life. It probably wasn't. That'll come again when he kind of emerges out with this heel role as a babyface.
Yes.
I feel like I can see Sidgwick's arms going, no.
I'm here for it. To use your horrible millennial language. crazy.
Unbelievable. Let us know your thoughts on, well, just everything in the comment section down below or on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. And whilst there, you can follow all three of us. You can follow Michael Hamflett at
Michael Hamflett.
You can follow Michael Sidgwick at
Sidgwick.
You can follow me at Adam Wilbourn. As I said, you can follow us all at WhatCultureWWE. Make sure you subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes or Spotify for daily podcasts because there's a lot of them going to be coming out in the next few days around Survivor Series. My thanks to the Dudley Boys. Thanks to Vince McMahon for all his banter. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.
Try.